Well, howdy everyone, and welcome to another... Oh no, we're back with looking at characters again, aren't we? Oh, God. So, last episode I made the unfortunate choice of including Hector, because he's a non-focus summon, which brought on a deluge of people talking to me about how I missed, say, a character that they had who was really powerful. So, that brings us to this episode where we talk about those characters, because otherwise I'm fearful of the angry mob that might be at my door. However, big props go out to Lucina, Marth, and Roy, because they will not be featured in this episode. I know, people might be going, why? Well, I want to focus on other characters that aren't focus summons. This one is going to be the rule. We're going to focus on ones that might be rarer and more interesting. You know, more, what's the word? Alright, exotic. That's what I was going for. Exotic, as in rarer and not any of the, protagonists from really big games. Anyways, let's start out with some of the more interesting factoids that we're going to be talking about this episode. One is we're going to be tackling the Takumi problem, or as people simply call it, the meta, which apparently is a thing nowadays. Because apparently Takumi is meta, and he is everywhere because he is not rare by, a lot of the other standards of characters. So I have seen people use just 4 of him in one round in Arena, and that is terrible, so we'll be tackling how to handle him a bit more with certain units, okay? And that means we'll be tackling a character that I skipped over last time, which I'm sure people will be very happy about that. And this time, don't worry, we actually have blue characters. We're evolving! Alright, but before we begin, I do have to say one thing, and that is, I know a lot of people really love certain Fire Emblem characters, and while I might not encourage them to get them, or perhaps that they're not that great right now, understand that this is a gacha game, meaning that things will change all the time. And we might get new versions of a character that you really love, and they could be amazing. So let's go over some examples of that right now, shall we? So you might think this is a normal Roy, right? Except you're wrong. This Roy has a mustache, which gives him manly strength, makes his defense through the roof. Also, he has all forms of counter. So, yeah, good luck with that, right? Which, by the way, hashtag RoyStash. Just gonna point that out right there. Beautiful. And how about one more example? Yeah, that's right, this is Camilla, except not really. It's Camilla with a fashionable hat. Yeah. And that hat does absolutely nothing. Not really. It's a hat. What, did you think just putting a hat on Camilla would make her great? What's wrong with you? This is probably a bit on the nose, but yeah, so basically just saying that any character that you love and hold dear will probably get an alternative version sometime down the line. Hell, we don't even have Ike yet. Like, what the hell? But still, nonetheless, here we are. And we're gonna get into the characters that are useful for now. And these characters are not focused. So if you manage to roll these, you're pretty good. So now it's time to start off with Colorless. The first of the group that we always start off with for some reason, because I made these rules up as I went along. Alrighty, so let's start off with Kagero. She's a ninja from Hoshido. Her main weapons are daggers, i.e. throwing daggers, and she is a very good anti-infantry unit, and there's one reason why, and those of course are her weapons. You see, I believe at rank 4, at default, she is equipped with poison daggers, which do extra damage to infantry, but also reduce their defense and resistance by 4, and that can be upgraded at 5 stars to Poison Dagger Plus, which does 6 resistance down and 6 defense down. She also gains, of course, abilities like Retribution and Reprisal, which we've gone over before in previous videos, and she gets things like Warding Blow. But again, the most prevalent thing about Kagero here is her Poison Dagger, so if you get her 4 stars and above, you're good. Like, seriously, really good. Not only that, but Kagero is a very good anti-Takumi. If you can get her, she's useful enough to take him down. I've heard that she can delete him, quote unquote, but again, the one thing I do know about this meta is that poison is a very, very effective debuff, and it's definitely something that's good to have on a weapon, especially for Kagero, who's able to attack from a distance and not get anywhere close to the enemy. So, there you go, there's a ninja. So, let's talk about Clarine here. Yeah, a lot of you were wondering what would be a good healer to have along if you were to bring along a staff user at all. And, well, I was debating it. There was Elise, there was Lissa, there's Maria, Sakura. There's a lot of healers out there, but Clarine is probably one of my favorites when it comes down to it just because of her abilities. So, let's discuss her, shall we? So, I guess we should talk about her debuff, which is her main ability. When she's a 3-star rarity and above, she has access to Fear, which lowers an enemy's attack. And that could be a difference between a massive hit or 0 damage across the board. So all in all, it's a nice debuff for her to have as a cleric, and it's certainly something to look forward to when using her when you don't need to heal. She also has access to Reconcile, which basically means that she heals the target but also heals herself for 7 health. I mean, granted, it's not the best heal, but hey, between both of them, that's a pretty nice advantage to have when you're out in battle. Her stat spread, all in all, is okay, and her passive skills are basically just resistance, which isn't that great, but what she does get in exchange is Swift Wind's Balm. This basically just applies speed, I believe +4 speed, to all friendly units whenever she heals, which is... that's just amazing, actually. That's a great ability to have, and she's definitely a healer you would want to pick up if you do get her. No, really. She's actually pretty good. But for now, let's move on to Red. And I know a lot of people are going to be saying, I know this character's coming. Yes. Yes, it is time. It is time to talk about our lobster god. It is time to bring out Ryoma. A lot of you were very upset that I didn't include him last time. Like, I got so many comments with, where's Ryoma? Why didn't you include Ryoma? Where is he? Why doesn't he exist in your list? Patience. Please, just don't worry. I know he exists. He's great, and we're going to talk about him right now. Starting off, well, we have to talk about his iconic weapon, Raijinto. You know, his samurai sword that shoots lightning, basically. Yeah, that exists in this game. It's his default Rarity 5 weapon, I believe. And it allows him to counter any attack regardless of distance. He's basically Takumi. Just, he has a sword that shoots lightning. I want him. Please, can I have him? Hand him over right now. But that isn't the only thing he has. Oh boy, we have a lot more to go into. Then we have Night Sky and its upgraded form Astra, which means he gets more damage, of course, because, you know, shooting lightning out of your sword isn't enough. We also have Hone Speed 1, 2, and 3, which grants adjacent friendly unit speed 2 through 5, because why not? And then we have Defined Attack, which, well, raises his attack by 3, 5, or 7 if his health is equal to or less than 50%, meaning that he's gonna do a lot more damage if he's hurt. Oh my god, there's a reason why Ryoma is powerful. I mean, it's fairly obvious in just the skill set. I think it's fairly clear why people wanted me to talk about him, or were asking why he was missing from the list. It's kind of a glaring oversight on my part. Whoops! That's about it for Red this episode because, well, we have a lot more units to cover, and I really want to focus on Blue because last time we didn't really touch them at all, and I kind of feel bad about that, so let's start off with some Blues, shall we? And up next we have Nowi. She's our first Blue that we're covering in this, and there's a lot of reasons for it. You see, Nowi, she has good stat gains throughout most of the game. Not only that, but she also has her weapon, which is Lightning Breath because she's a dragon. Now, Lightning Breath, normally, just the normal version, unlocks at Rarity 4, but if you manage to get her at Rarity 5, she also has access to Lightning Breath Plus, which she has by default, I believe. And what's great about this is that it allows her to counterattack regardless of attacker's range. Sounds somewhat familiar, right? So basically, she's able to nuke people from a little bit of a distance if they try to attack her from that. So let's move on to her skills, shall we? First off and foremost, her assist skill is called Rally Defense, and that's a pretty basic one, but I'm sure you can understand. It basically just grants +4 defense to an adjacent ally for a turn, and defense is no joke in this game. Remember when we talked about Kagero and her defense lowering abilities? yeah, it makes a huge difference. Outside of that, we have her passives, which are pretty basic. I mean, there's defense plus 1 through 3, which, well, just grants her defense plus 1 through 3. Shocker. Next up, we have her passives, and, well, one of them's pretty simple. It's just called defense, plus 1 through 3. Guess what it does? It improves her defense, plus 1 through 3 based on rank. She also has threat and resistance, which lowers resistance by 3, 4, and 5 from enemies around her, you know, blah-de-blah-de-blah, but for the most part, Nowi's about getting in there, soaking up some damage, buffing allies, and counterattacking, because apparently that's the meta right now, is any unit that can counterattack is worth their salt, and Nowi is definitely worth all of that. But let's stop talking about Nowi, and let's move on to Cordelia, who I mentioned briefly in the last video, but now it's time for her to shine. So last time I mentioned her in the other video, I said she was a lot like Lyn, and she kind of is, but she has her own little thing that she can do that makes her a lot more powerful in a way. But she starts off with the Brave Lance Plus, slight knock to the speed, but allows her to attack 2 times when initiating combat. She also has access to Night Sky, and of course his upgraded version Astra, which we've gone over before. But additionally, she also has Gale Force, which, again, like Lyn, means after a certain charge, she gets an additional turn. Which, again, I compared to Lyn. I mean, they're somewhat similar, at least when it comes to skill set. But where they change is passives, and Cordelia has some very odd ones that might give you an advantage or an extreme disadvantage if you are not careful. She has access to Pass, which allows her to pass any enemy unit as long as her health is above a certain percentage. But mostly what we want to look at right now is Triangle Adept, which unlocks at rank 4 and then at also rank 5. I think you also get the original ability without any of the rarities, but basically Triangle Adept is, well, based around the weapon triangle. And what this basically means is that she's either going to have plus or minus 10, 15, or 20% damage based on who she attacks. For instance, if she attacks a green unit, she will do 20% less damage, but if she attacks a red unit, she will do 20% more damage. So it's kind of a double-edged sword here. Cordelia can do a ton of damage to red, but she also can sacrifice that damage when she attacks a green. It's more if you want to use this ability to your advantage or not. Considering that some of the meta kinda is dominated by a lot of red units right now, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But it's really up to you when it comes to Cordelia. She's very strong, but you'll need to be aware of what you're going into. So let's talk about tanks. More specifically, this tank right here. This is Effie. And Effie is a monster. Effie is a weird character, mostly because a lot of people don't really look at her and think, oh man, she could do a lot of damage. She only seems to be a tank, and she does that really well. But aside from that, Effie is one of the units that you can withstand a lot of brutal punishment with, and she can deal out the damage too. You see, at level 40 with 5 stars, she has the most stat growth below Hector. In fact, she has more damage, at least more attack, than Hector, which is outrageous. So generally, when you look at Effie and think, oh, she might not be that great, think again, because this character here, she's going places. Even if she can't counterattack, she will withstand you. Trust me. So right from the get-go, you'll notice that at rank 5, she has a Silver Lance Plus. I believe she has a Silver Lance at rank 4, and is her default. Mostly, she's all about being kind of an assisting tanking character. So let's just skip assists right now and go to passive skills. Basically, this is kind of where you see that Effie has a bit of an advantage when it comes to initiating the attack. Death Blow 1 through 3, and that basically grants 2, 4, and 6 attack if the character initiates the combat. Oh man, that's some sweet-ass damage. She also, of course, has a defensive capability in Wary Fighter. Basically what this does is it prevents follow-up attacks in combat as long as the character is, I believe, greater than a certain health percentile, and I believe that ranges from 90 to 70 to 50 based on rank. Then we have Smite, which, you know, sounds like a little bit more of a damaging ability, but basically what this does is it allows Effie to push ally units away from her. 2 spaces, in fact, which is pretty nice to get some units out of the fray when it's needed. All in all, Effie is probably one of the bigger surprises to come out of this game when it comes to unit potential. She is really strong, like incredibly. And if you take the dedication to get her to 5 stars, even if you don't get her at, 5 stars from summoning, it's definitely worth your time to take her up there. She's currently one of the more powerful units stat-wise, and that is something to tip your hat at. Alright, so that's the end of blue right now. Let's move on to green. And this time we're going to narrow down green a bit more, because we kind of spent a lot of time on it as well, and I honestly only have one unit to really talk about right now, and that's another dragon. And that character, well, her name is Fa, and she's adorable. Fa here, she's actually right below Nowi in stat gains, and she also has access to some really good abilities that help her get into fights and allow her to stay there. You see her breath attack that she starts off with at rarity 4, and then she can upgrade at rarity 5, is called Light Breath. And what this does is it grants adjacent allies defense and res 4 throughout their next actions after she has initiated combat. So she's mostly meant to be in the front lines and attacking. She's definitely one who wants to get in there, do some damage, buff her allies. That's the objective there. And she definitely has the passives to help this out, mostly in the forms of Threat and Attack 1, 2, and 3, which basically means that when she goes in, enemy units around her, I believe within 2 tiles, are inflicted with attack -3, 4, or 5 based on the rank of Threat and Attack. She also has access to Renewal 1, 2, and 3, and what this does is that it restores 10 HP based on a set amount of turns, and the rank changes the amount it's needed. It starts off at 4 turns, then goes to 3 turns, and then the renewal at the top rank gives her a 10 health point heal every 2 turns. So right now you can see why people who have Fa are actually pretty happy with her. But all in all, she's a great unit. If you can get her, she's just rare as hell. And if you get her at 4 stars, feel free to get her up to 5, because she's worth the investment, just like Effie. And with Fa, that's pretty much all the characters I want to talk about right now. We still have a few to go through. If you want to see more, feel free to tell me. If you have certain characters you want me to highlight, feel free to inform me in the comments below. I'm always open for them. And last but not least, let's talk about Takumi. Mostly, a lot of people have been asking, how the hell do you deal with him? And while I don't really have a great suggestion, mostly due to the fact that the meta right now is quite broken with him and his abilities, I do suggest bringing along Male Robin, mostly because of his weapon that allows him to have an advantage over Colorless unit, which is what a Takumi is. A Takumi. I'm really good at this. But mostly, just if you want to bring that along, or if you have Kagero, bring her along as well. That's pretty much all I have for suggestions right now. I mean, this game needs to really get past the Takumi meta. They need to fix that nonsense because, oh boy, he is everywhere, isn't he? I had an arena match a while ago that had 4 Takumis. 4. That's way too many. But all in all, if you enjoyed this, well, leave a like if you could. It really does help out, and maybe share it with your friends. I put a lot of work into these. I'm scrounging through things, making sure everything works out. So anyways, it's time to call it a night. Hope you guys all have fun. See you soon.